Hopefully you can hear me and you can see me okay. Yep.
Yeah.
It's always useful to check in a webinar about technology whether the technology works, which is also, is always a starting point. Yes, my role is I'm a principal lecturer at Nottingham Business School, and I've been doing a number of things under that role. But I would say, but obviously you can read all that, the boring stuff that we usually write in a profile, in the various links and in my LinkedIn page. But I think the interesting thing that I can bring in the discussion around technology and education is that since I remember myself, I've been engaging in both of these. And I was fortunate enough when I was about 10 to have these first personal computers, these Amstrad 6128 at the time. And I remember spending my nights coding in the early versions of the BASIC. So, and then I followed all the development of IT over the years as I was becoming a student, and then the growth of the internet and all that. So I've seen the life cycle of that brought us here. So that's one thing. The other aspect is about international education, that I've been part of that in all the different roles. So I've started as a student studying in the UK, then moved back in Greece where I was managing a private college and teaching at the same time, delivering courses of UK universities. So as a partner of UK institutions. And then I came back in the UK, and now since 2014, I'm an academic and a researcher. So I've been wearing all these different hats in international FHEA, while at the same time I was having this lifelong experience with education. This is why I'm so interested into it. So this is really about my background. What I'm going to do today is, let me share my screen first. So what I will do today is, hopefully you can see my screen now. I will talk a little bit about the key challenges and opportunities in international higher education in relation to technology. Why is the need, first of all, to do that? Higher education, and in particular international FHEA, that I'm going to define in a minute, is a vast market. And with the COVID development, the need to adopt technology came at the front of the agenda. But at the same time, the debate so far in the narrative has been rather simplistic. So let's jump onto online and distance education and scrap all the traditional delivery. So there's some very simplistic ways that EdTech has been discussed within the context of FHEA. So my talk today is going to be around trying to set the context and the priorities, if you like, about EdTech in international FHEA. What I'm going to do is I'm going to skip these first two slides, and I'm going to keep them for later if we have time. So to begin with, the first one is I'm going to touch upon what I call the mega trends in higher education. First of all, international higher education is defined as the provision of higher education either across borders, so distance learning, or offering UK higher education programs in China via branch campuses there, or by partnerships with other universities there, or the traditional form of international higher education, which is students traveling, crossing borders to study in a different country. So it covers both ends. So it's some form of crossing borders, either by students, academics, programs, or institutions. That summarizes the what international HE means. So in order for any innovation to happen, and I'm not an innovation expert, but I've been following this trend for a number of years, and I've been teaching in business schools about finance and investment. For any innovation to happen, you need to follow the trends, but make sure that the wave you ride is one that can take you a long way. So innovating on disrupting events is fine, but you need to make sure that these events last, the impact of these events last for long, in a way that your product or service can be successful in the future. And therefore, I'm not going to be, as you see, I'm not including COVID here, because the way I see it is that there have been some more important changes happening in higher education other than COVID that will transform higher education in the years to come. COVID it has an effect, is a catalyst that will accelerate some of these changes, but is not going to be the major factor of change. As soon as a vaccine comes, things are going to be back to normal. That's my view, especially in international mobility. Just to give you an estimate, even with all these problems that are going on at the moment, applications for international students who are willing to come in the UK and study here are up by 40% this year now. So what this tells me is that the drive of international students to study in another country is there and is not going to be impacted by disrupting events, short-term or medium-term, like COVID. So the challenges that someone needs to take into account when is thinking to innovate or thinking in EdTech terms is the following. The first one I would say is what I call here sustainability. And by sustainability, there are two elements there. One is the environmental footprint of universities, especially when it comes to international travel. Just to give you an idea, an academic in the UK is having 10 times the environmental footprint than the average person in the UK. And that is because of international flights. So before COVID, people would tend to fly all over the place for conferences and so on and so forth. The same for students. So one of the things that is going to happen is that this is going to be now rationalized. And that is one of the positive effects of COVID, but was also in the agenda before that. Another thing that relates to sustainability is the aspect of universities as global social enterprises. So going beyond the typical role of educating people and generating some income, they are now seen as having a duty to society globally, and in particular in relation to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So universities now have, as part of their priorities, strategic priorities, things like the Sustainable Development Goal number 4, of improving access to good quality education around the globe, or promoting equality, or promoting economic development and supporting infrastructure and so on. So part of the priorities is going to be around sustainability in the years to come. And obviously I'm going to explain in a minute how this could translate into opportunities for EdTech. The other thing that is quite important and is probably self-explanatory is the employability concerns. So now there's a big debate that grows, especially after the development of the fourth industrial revolution and the future of work concept. We know now that in the future, there's going to be a completely different skill set required by graduates. And there was also already a skill gap between what the universities are offering and what the market demanded. There was already a skills gap there. This skills gap now widens. So universities are now under pressure to respond to that. They have problems in doing so because the way they develop their programs is mostly based on research, theory, and what the safety zone of the academic staff. So universities are slightly reluctant to go as fast as they are told to do in relation to embracing the recommendations coming from the market. However, the key difference we see these days is that students are now, because they contribute in the payment of fees directly, either through student loans or directly by paying in cash, they see that transaction as an economic one. Obviously, there's a lot of problems with that, but this is where we are at the moment. So there's a lot of concerns now about whether students are going to get a return for their investment once they graduate. So there's a huge debate at the moment between universities, students, the government, about what is the right thing to do there. So there's quite a lot of pressure for universities to respond to that. In relation to the employability concerns is the competition. So competition is growing in a number of respects in higher education. And I have identified at least, well, the two major forms of competition here. One is the volume of supply. Just to give you an idea, typical sending countries of international students, like China, for instance, everybody knows that China is a major sending country of international students to countries like the UK or the US. However, one of the things that is not known outside of probably a pool of experts in higher education is that at the same time, China now is a major destination for international students. The latest figure tells us that there is about 500,000 of international students studying in China at the moment. So it's a massive number. And why is that? Because China, along other countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, United Arab Emirates, Cyprus, and the list goes on and on, they've been developing the capacity of the higher education system. And what this means, for instance, for China, in 2016, China was building one new university every week. So you can imagine the magnitude of the growth. So universities are challenged because they are now facing more competition. And at the same time, it's also the diversity of the competition. Now, we don't only see universities emerging, but at the same time, we see alternative providers emerging to be faster, to respond faster in this skills gap. So one example here is the recent announcement by Google that they are offering these fast track degrees in IT. So, and we see a growth in that. So there's a range of providers there, ranging from Google or Coursera or 2U, and a number of other providers that are exploring different segments of the market, like IT education, executive education, and so on. The last external challenge there is the accountability. So there's a growing scrutiny by governments, not that it wasn't before, but now because of the numbers of HE have been grown so much, governments are now scrutinizing quite a lot what happens inside universities, mainly because they are partly funding them. So therefore they see they have a stake in them in relation to whether these enterprises are achieving a good return for the assets they've been given. Some concerns there is the grade inflation. So there's been a growing concern, especially in the UK, to what extent we have been allowing students to get better grades in higher education, and what is the potential effect of that in the value of their degrees. So again, quite a lot of scrutiny there and quite a lot of pressure on universities on that regard. So the external challenges will somehow shape the internal challenges. So what happens inside universities at the moment is one of the areas that is of a main concern at the moment is the effective assessment. And there's a number of different things here. The first one, which is clearly aligned to technology, is the new forms of academic misconduct. So now we have the so-called contract cheating, the essay mills, where students order someone to hire someone to write their assignments and so on. That's a very, very difficult one to track. So far, there hasn't been one solution to it. There's a major problem at universities at the moment. The second one is something that emerged with the COVID situation, is that to what extent universities are able to conduct the assessment like examinations in a way that is not reliant on the face-to-face and traditional interaction. Again, quite a lot of need for a reliable and easy to use solution there. When it comes to admin, there's a great need to streamline processes inside universities. Sometimes you have systems that do not communicate with each other. So there may be a learning management system that does not clearly communicate with the internal system for admin. So there is, again, a great need for achieving efficiencies there. When it comes to the student side of things, there are different things there, but are interrelated. The one is the academic success, as I call it here. And this is all about making sure that you enable every single student to achieve the best they can. The old way of looking into it was that you need to have very good students in order for them to be able to perform. So this is why in the past universities have been super selective, and they were asking for very good grades and so on and so forth. But what this does is that it disadvantages all these students who are coming from a disadvantaged background, and because of one way or another, they didn't manage to achieve these good grades. But research has shown that if you give the right learning environment to the students, then they are able to perform. So this falls within what we call the widening participation agenda. That is also part of the government priorities, is the role of universities to enable every single student, irrespective of the background, to achieve the best they can. And again, technology here has a role to play. The other aspect here is student experience, and this is all about student satisfaction. So how how satisfied are the students overall about the services they receive, including services outside the classroom and services inside the classroom, though, the quality of education and the service quality. There's been quite a lot of resources spent, consumed on that. So in every single university in the UK, there is a task group every year trying to make sure that the student survey, which is taking place at national level, will be managed in a way that the university will score high, because that's quite important for the rankings and so on. At the center of these internal challenges, I have something that summarizes both the internal and the external challenges, which is universities now are in need of a model that offers a personalized value-adding experience to their students, truly personalized and truly value-adding, with very clear alignment in relation to the employability aspect, and in particular about the future of work. And in there, the better you know the student, the more personalized becomes the experience. And I'm going to explain in a minute how this could look like in practice. So now, in terms of the opportunities, I have classified those as technologies aimed at the students. So thinking in terms of who is the buyer of these technologies, who is the direct user. One is technologies that can be used outside of the university and could be directed straight to the students without the need of the university as an intermediate. And second, solutions that are aimed at universities. So opportunities for EdTech for students. So some practical examples of things that are potentially needed here is students need data to support their decision-making about course selection and study destination. So there's thousands of universities and courses around the world now. There is not a single repository of courses and universities which is open access and complete, that offers this rich information that is needed for the students to make well-informed decisions. So that is definitely something which is in need. The second one is aggregators and curators of content to support study. Students still rely on old school web searching when it comes to finding content. There's been some efforts by publishers, I don't want to name them because mostly I'm going to say negative things, but what the publishers have done is they have simply converted a textbook into a digital textbook. But the need here is that for a more advanced system where, like the IBM Watson or things like that can leverage the AI technology and provide students with good quality resources from the web, but directly related to what they're looking for. The other two relate to employability. There's a great need for this experiential aspect when it comes to students. So when they graduate, they are in great need of, or even before, they are in great need of getting in touch with someone who is already performing in a role they are looking to make a career in, and get some first-hand advice. So usually this is facilitated through the university, but it takes forever. It's such a hard and difficult process and consumes too much of resources. So So EdTech can come in there and create a solution that could streamline the whole process and could make it a bit more direct and effective. The last point here is about the need now for students to follow this cycle of continuous upskilling and reskilling as along their careers. So in the future, students that are graduating now, they are going to be in need of a lifelong personal development plan and career development plan. So a continuous personal development plan. So a platform that facilitates that or helps them to identify the areas that they need to focus their upskilling, that would be quite effective and successful. Some potential problems there. The good thing with students is that you can get them straight. So is a market which is easy to access. The problem is that it's a very dynamic market and it's changing all the time. Is a vast market, and therefore it may be difficult to segment, measure, and focus. If you are successful, however, there's the potential that you create additional products and services out of it, because students become employees and then possibly employers and then parents and so on and so forth. So there's a potential of cross-sale, upsale there. However, students, the things you can offer to students is restricted to their ability to have access to good quality IT. So some students don't have fast internet, they don't have fast computers, and so on and so forth. So that is definitely a limitation. When it comes to universities now, let me start from the bottom, because I think there's a ton of things you can write here, but these are possibly the main things you need to be aware of. The difficult thing with universities is that it's a very difficult market to enter. You need to know someone. That is definitely the case, because universities are quite protective for obvious reasons. At the same time, academics and researchers are known for not being very good when it comes to accepting change. So this is why you see some legacy technologies being used in universities forever, and very difficult for universities to adopt new technologies. So with this in mind, the positive factors obviously is now everybody has accepted that instead of having meetings, you can have a Skype meeting or a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting. So COVID has acted as a catalyst to accelerate this adoption of tech. And now everybody sees that the future model of FHEA is going to incorporate technology in one way or another anyway. Now, some potential areas of focus in higher education is what I call personalized and adapting learning paths on legacy learning management systems. And what I mean by that is that now all the universities are using either Moodle or Desire to Learn or Blackboard or any system like that. But what is missing, this is a really old school system. What is missing there is that once student logs into the system, what they see and what is prioritized for them reflects their standing point when it comes to the progress with their course. So in other words, you need a system where it tracks the progress of the student, how much time they've spent with resources and so on, so forth. What are the things they probably are not very good at, and then when they log into the system, what they see is tailored according to their profile. So this is what I mean by personalized adaptive learning paths. This will be very, very, very successful if it happens, because it's right at the core of this need for personalized model of delivery. Other things is about the use of mixed reality as a standard ad hoc solution for teaching remotely. And I've been talking about mixed reality since 2015. And I was arguing at the time that, in fact, is a great technology that can be used to teach students who study, let's say, on a UK university program that is offered in China. Instead of flying professors out for 2 weeks, you can have a mixed reality holographic lecture offered to them. It's not the same, it's not face-to-face, but is as good as it can be as a replacement to face-to-face. The problem with mixed reality is that, and this is the opportunity I think for EdTech, is that this space has been dominated by Microsoft, and the way they have been managing this technology, I wouldn't say it's problematic, but it doesn't help its application in a mass scale. The cost of each device now is very, very high. So if an alternative solution comes into play where it allows that technology to be adopted at mass scale at a lower cost, that will be definitely a success. The use of AI and blockchain to address what I mentioned before as the key problem these days in universities, the contract cheating and essay mills. So we need a solution that goes beyond the typical scanning of similarity of text through Turnitin or similar. And the final point here is about the dynamic data dashboards that combine data from across the university, internal data, but also external data like employability elements, perceptions of employers, all the trends that management and academics need to know in order to tweak the provision. So a dashboard that can support decision-making about learning and teaching. So who is the student who is behind? But at the same time, when it comes to the development of courses, what are the things we need to be focusing on? So, and they have to be dynamic, they have to be live, they have to be 100% aligned with real time. So yeah, this was what I wanted to cover. I think I ran a little bit over. So let me know if you have any questions. Sorry, take that aside.
Thank you so much. And no, like a lot of the stuff that you said really resonates. As an international student who has done her fair share of carbon footprint as well, but just in general, having used Moodle and some other tools that are not necessarily the best. So we have a couple of questions already, and everyone, please feel free to send more as we go if anything comes up. So the first one says, how have universities responded to the value for money ROI challenge that you mentioned earlier? Okay.
They have been doing a number of things. And if you follow it depends where, but let's focus on the UK. Mm-hmm. If you go around in any campus of any UK university, you will see massive investment going on in intangibles, in buildings, in student union, gyms, and so on and so forth. That's one way that this is translated. The other way is what happens inside the delivery internally, which is about experiential learning. So now students are offered trips, they go and visit companies, they have projects that are done on real business cases. So universities have been doing their best and investing a lot on the employability support internally for students. There's a lot of great work there. I think my point here is that there's two things that need to be done here. This needs to be rationalized a little bit because we cannot continue on this narrative of students as customers, because this could only lead to the devaluation of the standards. So yes, we need to match the expectations when it comes to some decent employability prospects, but at the same time, students need to be made aware that it's their responsibility to create their competitive edge inside the university. So the university is if you like, the framework where an individual could develop itself. So that would be my take on that.
So I guess kind of continuing on talking about UK universities, we have a question specifically on that, asking how these universities have been threatened, if they have been, by this rapid increase that you described in the number of Chinese and ASEAN universities, and just this like oversupply that is now appearing in education.
Yeah, they have. That's the short answer. The more longer answer is that it depends. Some universities whose brand is global by definition, like the Oxford and the Cambridge, they have not. So it depends. So it's like global businesses. So it's the same analogy there. But as a way of giving you some data, overall, international student mobility, the whole market of international students has grown by 7% over a period per year, over a period of 10 years. So we did a study for between 2008 and 2018, and the so the compound annual rate of growth was 7%. For the UK, it was 2%. So yes, is a downward trend in the growth. It's growing, but not as fast. So countries like China and countries like Malaysia, in the Asia, Southeast Asia region, have seen a decline in the growth of students that they've been sending to the UK. This is why there's been quite a lot of debate now for universities not to be focusing a lot in the China market and try to diversify.
No, that makes total sense. And I mean, it's also just a huge problem if they have a problem where they're having too many people who want to go to university, and it's much more convenient as well, and in terms of the value for money and everything, to do it there. So I guess as they develop, the universities here will have to figure out how to keep being appealing for the most part, except for Oxbridge and some of these others. So in terms, keeping with the challenges, and then we'll delve into some other questions that we're getting. So you have shown many of the challenges universities are facing, but which one would you say is the biggest or more immediate threat to the traditional universities in the UK?
I think there's different ones, I think altogether, but I think the main one is for universities to try and rationalize what is important before they jump on the hype of tech or distance or value for money or whatever, because there's a danger there, as is for technology. So everybody is now super excited about online and distance. Well, in fact, it's not new. Online and distance education has been around for 50 years. So it doesn't mean that because the majority of the world find out about online, that this is a new thing. Is not. And online and distance, for instance, is not something that will replace face-to-face, in my view. So what we see now, so first of all, the entire higher education market is driven by a number of factors, but is only one factor that drives that in the long term. And that is the drive of the individual student to study. So irrespective of what we say about assumptions, is the drive of the Greek, the Italian, the Chinese, the Indian, the British student to study at the university. And the drive there is for international students still exists. It's mainly about having this transformative experience across borders. This is not going to go away. It's not going to be compensated by studying online. The typical international student who travels, crosses borders, is not the student who is going to buy online or distance education. I've been in online and distance education for about 15 years myself. The type of students you see there are working professionals and people who are managing a number of other things, and they want to do some studies, and they do that at their own time and at their own pace. So online is not going to be something that will replace face-to-face. So starting from there, so I think universities need to rationalize on that and not jump on the boat of, oh, let's do online, because they will find in the hard way that this is not what the students want. And B, it costs more than face-to-face. Plus, it requires quite a lot of detailed planning to do it properly. So I think this is the main thing they need to do, not to jump on the boat of online and distance without a very careful consideration. The other thing is to try, and so I would start from the personalization aspect. So if I were to choose one of the things I mentioned there in my presentation, I would go for that personalization thing there. Sorry, this one. So the personalized adaptive learning, because this is at the heart of the provision. It offers a unique experience to the student and actually is going to generate quite a lot of positive outcomes across the board. So students are going to be more happy, the outcomes are going to be better, the education outcomes, the attainment. So fewer students are going to be left behind. So this is going to be the starting point, I would say. So try at the heart of the teaching and learning experience to use technology to personalize it, to offer an adaptive learning experience to students based on their profile. So that would be my take on that.
Right, and I guess like a takeaway from that is that technology can be integrated without going fully online. There is a sort of balance and kind of value in a middle ground.
Yeah, and I think this is the key takeaway there, that and this is anyway the case in universities. You would have to, any solutions you offer there probably are not going to be standalone. And this is the point I want to make here. Universities are using legacy technologies as a standard. So therefore, technically, any solution you develop has to be like an add-on to that. In addition to that, and in contrary to what I mentioned before, that you don't need to jump on the train of online and distance. You do need to embrace technology as a way of amplifying the face-to-face experience of your students. So yes, definitely, technology EdTech is a way to provide an augmented face-to-face teaching and learning experience to students. There's various ways that you could do that, and various areas you could focus upon. But I would definitely suggest as a starting point the one I mentioned there. So personalized learning paths, or even solving the problem of contract cheating. These are needs of which are really, really pressing at the moment.
So we have a very different question coming up now, and someone is asking, how do you think the data exhaustion gap will be solved within universities?
First of all, probably you can hear me and see me now. How the data exhaustion gap, what do you mean by exhaustion gap?
I actually don't know. This is an anonymous question that we've received, but we can skip that one and go on to the next question. So this one is about your use of EdTech in the classroom. So do you use EdTech tools? Like, did you use them before the pandemic, and if so, how?
Yes. So there's two things there. What I've used personally and what the average academic is using. I think what the average academic was using before the pandemic was pretty standard things, with some exceptions. So it was like the standard PowerPoint and standard presentation aids. Some academics have been using polling tools like Poll Everywhere and polling tools in class to get the feel of the class directly. Forms, which is similar, like running quizzes. Others have been using more specific technologies like simulation technologies that put students into a situation of a real-time, real business environment. So for instance, trading and investment. These are the pretty standard average technologies pre-COVID. Post-COVID, I think everybody is now in search of the right platform. The way that universities are now responding to that are using, most of them, I think, Microsoft Teams as the standard for having synchronous sessions, live sessions, and then integrating this into their learning management system. So having a way where you have your class automatically being created as a team in Teams. And again, there's a problem. Microsoft has been quite slow in responding to some of the more obvious demands for solutions there. Breakout rooms is not there yet, has been launched a week ago. So technically, before a month or so, you were not able to split your event into, say, little groups of students that they do an activity. So some other universities are using Zoom as far as I know, but I would imagine this is the minority. There's been a lot of add-ons into the Teams and the learning management system. So there's been solutions around quizzing and polling and exam proctoring, which is how students can have exams at a distance, and you can have their camera as a way of monitoring them and so on. But I would say it's pretty much the standard technologies that were there, but now are more widely adopted. There is no any super innovative stuff being done yet. And I think that's a good thing, because now we are in a mode of contingency, not innovation. So it's a way of how we can deliver to students in a way that is safe, is scalable, and is quality assured. So any effort there to experiment is not really the right thing to do. So I would say any form of innovation at universities ideally will happen after we have some certainty around the COVID situation, after we have crossed that crisis spot.
So we have one final comment from Abdul, and I think that relates a bit to what you were just saying about how we're now dealing with contingency, because he says we are facing the problem of unavailability of devices in Pakistan. So in terms of just kind of preserving education rather than radically changing it at the moment, I guess.
That's a super interesting one, Abdul. And the way there's a couple of things I've been arguing for. One is for governments to see the IT infrastructure as any other infrastructure. So like you build roads and hospitals, you need to enable your people to have IT access. Mainly because now we know why. Is a contingency. If we're not able to have schools, if there's another pandemic, we know what to do. So we need to solve that at national level. That would be my suggestion. And it's not difficult. If you think about the cost, it's not something that it takes more time to build a motorway. It takes years, whereas and far more money than it takes to establish some reliable connectivity and equip students with some standard laptops. So this is one of the main arguments. The second one is for universities in developed countries. For a long time, they have been arguing that they have been supporting quite a lot the developing world. And they've been saying, we did a trip there and we supported that community and we did some research about vaccines and we did this work, which is great. It's absolutely great. I think there is an opportunity now for them to say, well, actually, because we want to support communities in Pakistan or in another country, we are going to make an investment in supporting, say, the connectivity in one of the cities there. That would be an excellent story to tell when it comes to sustainability and global impact. So I think there's at least these two potential solutions there for that problem. So definitely something that we need to address, not only for this situation, but also for the future.
Definitely, and I think that's a great note to end on. And I just wanted to personally thank you again for joining us. This has been super interesting, and I think we've all learned a lot from your experience right now and just like in general. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot for having me. Thanks.